Thanks for being here after 45 days of not having a press conference with Coach Day. We'll open up today's proceedings with Stephen Means, Cleveland.com, and we got a lot of people here, so I'm gonna keep the questions to one apiece, at least initially. Stephen?
You're going first. Ryan, just can you take us through the process of how you ended up identifying Matt Patricia as the guy who would be your defensive coordinator? Was that someone maybe you thought about early on, or did maybe things developed?
No, you can tell that we were very thorough in how we went about the process. It took some time. One of the things that people ask me all the time, like, one of the biggest learning lessons every year that you learn as a head coach, and one of them is to make sure that you're thorough in the your hiring process, that you bring in the right fit. And I felt like Matt was that guy for a lot of reasons. I think the first one is his experience. Coaching 19 years in the NFL. He's coached in 6 Super Bowls, has 3 Super Bowl rings. It was important, so the experience speaks for itself. I think he's one of the best minds in the game. But also, pairing him with Tim Walton as a co-coordinator, pairing him with Larry Johnson, Matt Guerrieri, James Laurinaitis. That was important to have continuity. When you interview certain coordinators, they have an idea of what they want to do. They want to come in and run their style of defense. They want to, bring in their own guys. So that was the first thing. The second thing, and so part of that was having somebody that was willing to work with the guys that were in the room. That was very important. I just want to make sure that I, really praise the guys in that room. And having Tim Walton as a co-coordinator there is a huge part of our defense, and he was this year, and so was Matt, and so was Larry, and those guys. But I think Matt and Tim working together as the coordinators is going to be critical. I think that we need to continually look at how we have to evolve with our defense, and Matt brings a different approach to the game in terms of he's run different styles of fronts in the past. He's been multiple in what he's done, and I think when you look at his defenses, they've always utilized their players, and I think we've talked about that a lot, especially on offense. How do we put our players in the best position to be successful? I also, studied how Nick Saban went on his run, and he brought in different offensive coordinators. You think about that run, it was Lane Kiffin, it was Sarkisian, it was Daboll, it was Mike Loxley, it was Bill O'Brien, a lot of different coaches, but they kept a lot of the defense intact, and we want to make sure that our identity of what we do on defense stays intact as we have movement on our staff. So all those things led me down this road of Matt, who even in a short period of time has already worked hard on building relationships with the staff, with the players, and his experience is going to have credibility the minute he walks in that room of the guys that he's coached, the team, his experience on the field. And now that we're playing in a longer season, understanding how that goes and playing in the playoffs, I think all those were reasons that we ended up with Matt.
Over to the right, Don Taberry, WBNS.
Coach, as you look at what you have to get done this spring, what are maybe the top 3 things you need to get done that you're most concerned about this spring?
Well, I feel like we just got done with the season, which is because we did, and we finished on January 20th. We had that week there to celebrate, and then we're kind of right back into it. And we had our first mat drill, about 10 days ago. Had a second one today. We're going to go on spring break. We're starting a week later than we normally would. We're also going to do spring practice in 4 weeks as opposed to 5 weeks. So I think as you look at our team, there's a group of guys that have played a lot of football. And those guys who have played a lot of football coming off of last year are, especially in the first half of spring and maybe 3/4 of the spring, are going to be treated a little bit differently than some of the other guys. That's kind of one group. The next group are the guys that have played a lot of football but are now in a different role that really need to step up and become starters. And then you have guys that just got here that need a ton of football. So this is going to be a different style of spring. We're still looking at the format of the spring game / showcase, but we're going to try to play as much football as we can that day. But we're also going to be smart because we know with 16 games, what can happen is you can play a 16-game season. If you really just jump right in and have a normal spring practice, then you come back and play another 16-game season. That's a lot of football in 1 year. We have to be smart on that. So So that's kind of our approach to it. I think when you look at, our biggest concerns, you know, it's replacing the guys that walked out the door. You know, we can go through each position group if we want, and I'm willing to do that, but obviously that's the biggest key is replacing those guys. And obviously the guys who are returning, you know, they're in a different situation, but we certainly have, you know, holes that we need to fill.
Cameron T. Robinson, The Athletic.
Brian, you mentioned spring showcase. I mean, around the country, a lot of things are looking different for spring football. When you evaluate what you're doing, how much has that changed in the past just based on how long the season is?
Yeah.
Trying to keep that going.
Yeah, that's it, and you know, you have 15 opportunities, and in the past, those were all padded practices, very physical. That will not be the case for sure this spring. We will use some helmeted practices, almost like OTA styles, to take some of those, there'll be more teaching opportunities, to be smart there. Another thing is, you know, as we look ahead, you know, at the 105 on the roster, that's a lot different than when you're at 120 plus. So, I mean, the health of the team is gonna be even more important. So we gotta be smart with that. But yeah, we you know, the first time we play a game this year with this team is gonna be against Texas at home. So to get some of these young players in the stadium with a good crowd will still be important. So it isn't just gonna be, you know, a bunch of 7-on-7 and guys running around doing one-on-ones and individual drills. And we're gonna try to do the best we can to simulate game opportunities for our players, but there'll also be some players that will hold out in that game.
Spencer Holbrook, Letterman Row.
Brian, when you were going through the process of hiring an offensive line coach, how did you land on Tyler Bowen and his lack of coaching the offensive line the last few years? How did you plan to go through that process and land on him as head coach?
I think the first thing was that, you know, talk to Brian, and, you know, Brian will be a first-time play caller for us, and wanted to make sure that we had somebody in the room, in the run game, that had coordinator experience. You know, and I think Tyler, when you look at, you know, his past and his background, it's pretty diverse in terms of, you know, he's coached the O-line, he's coached the tight ends, he's obviously been a part of the run game coordinator, and that's, anytime you're in that, I mean, you're coaching the O-line because there's, you know, there's more offensive linemen on the field than any other position. So he played the position, he's a very, very good coach, he understands it. Even in a short period of time, you can ask our offensive lineman, he's on it. And then we have a really good support staff behind him that we hired, that I think are excellent. And they've got a lot of energy. I mean, you can feel them when they come in the building, the coaches. And so, you know, we'll work through the spring and kind of see and evaluate how that goes. But I think that he's gonna work tremendous with Brian, even in a short period of time. They see things the same way. And I think that, you know, for a first-time play caller, having that presence in there of somebody that sees it was important in the hire. But to your point, like the development of the O-line will be, that's his job. You gotta get that done, gotta get the run game organized. But, you know, he's got some help there as well, some guys that I feel strong about. And, you know, we'll again evaluate it coming out of the spring, but in a short period of time, you know, I've been impressed so far with the approach and even some of the work that we've done.
Dylan Davis, Delaware Gazette.
You talk about these guys that have played a lot of football, so maybe they don't get as many reps, but when you have a lot of staff turnover, especially with Matt Patricia coming in, like, how do you balance, like, giving those guys the rest they need for the long season, but also, like, these guys can be able to be able to get reps, carrying new voices and all this terminology and things like that?
Yeah, I think that's where we're all, you know, usually you have, like, we've talked about this a lot in here, you have a benchmark, you know, you go back and you check your notes from, you know, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. How do you check your notes on this? We just got done with the season, 16 games, now we're going into the spring. So we have to be smart on that. We have a plan of making sure that those guys, you know, are able to rest as well. But when you look at some of the younger guys who were on the scout team, you know, they are in a much different situation than Sonny Styles and IGB. You know, Carson Hinsman, you know, you can start going through the list. So we have to, I think, initially treat them differently, but quickly we have to get them, you know, all on the same page, that we're all on the same page. And so as spring goes on, we'll do that. But early on, we'll be really smart, especially coming off of spring break.
Over to the right, Kellyanne Stitz, WSYX.
Ryan, you mentioned the spring showcase looking a little bit different this year, and you guys are still hashing out those details. But are you able to share what that might look like?
Not yet, not yet. Yeah, I mean, there will certainly be opportunities to scrimmage,
Yeah.
and it'll look like a game. But you know, because of some of the guys that we mentioned, we still want them out there doing some things. So that will probably be in some drill work and some 7-on-7 work, and It'd be good to get everybody out there so that the fans can see them, but the most important thing is getting the young guys game reps with hopefully a good crowd out there. So that, because we know the next time again will be against Texas. So we're also gonna have to take a hard look at the health of our team as we get into the end of April. So we have to be able to adjust and be flexible with it. But again, that's the goal, is to get these guys as many reps as we can in the stadium.
Noah Weiskopf, the Lantern.
Ryan, now that you had that week after the national championship to sort of reflect and sit back, what do you think the biggest thing is that you learned about yourself during that entire playoff run?
Just to trust the process, yeah, and just keep pushing and sometimes, when we all know this, it's easy to say, it's a little bit different to do, is you just, again, trust the process and make the adjustments and keep pushing forward. We always say, ignore the noise, whether it's good or bad, because criticism and praise are all the same. You just have to, focus on what you're focused on, and all the work and decisions that are made during the beginning of the season. We have to adjust and tweak them, but at the same time, we also have to believe in what we believe in our philosophy. And I think it's also, making sure that you're recruiting the right people, that, when you do have a tough moment, everyone's able to stick together and not go in different directions and fray. I think those are all learning lessons.
Dave Biddle, 24/7 Sports.
Ryan, as you enter spring ball, is there a position group or groups that you're concerned about depth-wise? And might you guys add more from the portal? I know you've already done a good job in the portal, but.
One of the things for us that was tricky was, the portal was open before our season, and open and closed before our season was over.
Right.
And that's something that we gotta take a hard look at with rules. People will say, well, you guys just won the national championship, what are you complaining about? Well, it matters for this year's team. And, so that was a major challenge for us. Because as you can imagine, if you are trying to add somebody in the portal, but you're still trying to finish your season out, how that can affect your current roster. So, and then the second part of that is, we get done with the season, and Notre Dame and Ohio State are the only two teams with guys in the portal for that 5-day window, and everybody else is closed, and it's open season on our players for 5 days. Like, we gotta take a hard look at this to figure out what's right, and whether there's just one window in the spring portal, once all that is flushed out. To me, it's either that or you move back to games. But again, we can talk about that another date. So, we will obviously look in the portal based on how things come out of the spring. We'll look at that. Because, we have to fill our roster too. There's some positions that we're not at capacity right now. So depth, let's see, on defense, I would say right now D-line is probably of the biggest concern, just in terms of replacing those 4 guys. And then also, losing Hero. So that's five guys right there that we have to replace. I think that we have some good guys and good options there, but that'll be a focus. On offense, O-line is always something that we need to take a look at and see how some of those new guys fit in and how it all comes together. And then losing Quinshon and Trey at running back, James, and now we have CJ and some of the younger guys that, now they have to carry the water. So that's going to be, big, and obviously the quarterback would be the big, the big
Dan
focus. So I think when you look at it on offense, it's really just, replacing Will, replacing Travion and Quinshon, and then how the offensive line comes together. And then again on defense, it's, losing those 5 guys, and seeing who's going to step up in those areas.
Sorry about that.
No, it's
Dan Hope, 11 Warriors.
Follow up on Matt Patricia, obviously, you mentioned he's done a lot of different things schematically in his time. What makes you confident that what he did, in the NFL will translate to the collegiate level?
I think a lot of things that are going on, there's a trickle up and a trickle down effect right now, and you're seeing a lot of that happening. You're seeing a lot of guys transition, I think now more than in the past. You guys, probably focus on a little bit more than me, but of what's going on in the NFL and what's going on in college, you're seeing a lot of carryover there. And I think with the playoff system in place, you're seeing that. You're seeing the coaches communicate, coach to player communication. You're seeing huddling more. The hash marks are different, and there's certain rules that are different, but there's a lot of similarities now. So I think it's going to carry over well. You see quarterbacks who run and who are mobile in the NFL nowadays. So there's a lot more simulators now than in the past. And being in the league for just a couple of years, the transition isn't as crazy as maybe it had been in the past.
Jeremy Birmingham, the podcast.
Ryan, with your offensive staff being pretty young, I mean, you're almost 10 years older than everybody on staff except for Coach Slack, I think. How did that decision to, when Chip left, did that impact your decision with the defensive coordinator hire? Was there a thought that maybe you needed to go get somebody who was more of a head coach of the defense style based on the fact that you may have spent more time with the offense than you did last year?
Yes, I think that you need to have balance when you're looking at your entire staff, and you try to do that the best you can. And I believe very strongly that Brian's gonna do a great job as an offense coordinator. I think he's really grown in a lot of areas. I give him a lot of credit for, he was named coordinator a couple years ago. I still called the plays. Then we brought in Chip and his attitude of like, I'm just gonna learn from Chip in a big way. And then some of the work that he did, Keenan did, and Billy did down the stretch in some of the pass game. And I think he's got, a really good handle now on protections and even in the run game. Like, he's ready to call it now. But still gonna be involved, still gonna, just like I was last year, still gonna kind of make sure that, we're all on the same page. Having Tyler there was important. But I think to your point, I'm still gonna be involved with the offense, but I'm able to kind of bounce into the defense. But the more times that we have guys who are experienced and veteran, on that side of the ball, if I'm gonna stay on offense, it certainly helps. And I think, taking the play calling away last year was really important. I wanna continue to do that and surround myself with guys who, we can hire to do jobs, and I'm able to take a step back and take a little bit of a different role. I think it helped this season, and I'd like to, do that even more as we move forward.
Rob Aller, Columbus Dispatch.
Yeah, more on Matt. He clearly has credibility with his NFL, but I'm just curious in your discussions with him, interviews or whatever, why he decided to come back or come to college. He's not really been in college, Syracuse a little bit, but how much of that was not a concern, but a discussion point? I mean, you've got recruiting, you've got a whole different culture. How did that play out, and what did he say that can kind of convince you that he really wants to be in the college game?
I think you guys will get around Matt, you'll see his personality, you'll see the way he is, you'll just see, what type of family man he is, type of dad he is, type of husband he is. He did coach at Syracuse, he and Tim worked together there. But I grew up in New England, and I obviously saw the run that they went on there. And when you go on a run the way that they went on, you stay at a place for a long time. And I don't know if that was something that maybe even early on he thought he was going to be in the NFL for as long as he did. But when you're around a great organization that goes on the run that they went on, you end up at a place for a long period of time. And then he's there for a while, and then has an opportunity to become a head coach. Well, now it's almost like a different mindset. Maybe a little bit of a different chapter for him. Doesn't mean I'm sure he'll have an opportunity to go back to the NFL, but I think it's Ohio State. I think he understands the culture. We spent a lot of time talking, and I think he sees the opportunity here, and he's excited about it. I think it's a new chapter that he can absolutely come in here and make a difference, and I think that's what he wants to do. And I don't think the recruiting part is going to be very difficult at all, and you'll see it when you get around him.
Joe Nugent, WCMH.
Naturally, there'll be a new starting quarterback this year. As you start that process to figure out who that'll be, where are you with that? How much information do you feel like you have on the guys that are in the mix?
They're young, and they're going to have to compete. And we need a quarterback to be tough. We need him to be a leader. I've said this before. They've had a great opportunity to watch Will, even Tavian, because he was a big part of being around these guys last spring. I don't think he missed the spring practice. He would come during the season for all the games. He was with us for the last 2 weeks, for the last two games. He was able to see what that looked like. Lincoln was with him every day. Julian was with him every day. So that's the standard of what the leadership should look like. Now they got to go do it. And being the quarterback around here, you start listing the guys who have been here most recently and down in the history of Ohio State football. You're some of the best names who've ever played the game. But the biggest thing they have to do is they got to lead and they got to be tough. So long way to go on it. Don't have any evaluation to go with right now, but it's going to be a big spring for those guys.
Tony Gerben, Buckeye Huddle.
How do you see the quarterback reps going? Is it gonna be like a 40-40-20, or how are you expecting to break that down?
Early on, we're going to try to roll. We're going to try to go 3 groups so that those guys get equal amount of reps. We'll split up who goes where. And even last year with Will, we did that. Guys were getting reps with the 1s, guys were getting reps with the 2s, the 3s. The times where Will was out there with the 3s early on. and just rolling. Because if you put one guy with the ones and twos, sometimes it can look a little different because of the younger guys, older guys. So we're going to roll, and we're going to try to get the best evaluation we can. We'll evaluate everything, but specifically early on in the spring, we want to roll those guys the best we can. Because the number one goal of spring is to get individual players better. So, we can get scheme in and all that, but fundamentally, technically, we've got to get better as football players. Then once we get into the summer, we start putting the scheme together and we start coming up with the chemistry of the team.
Andrew Gillis, Cleveland.com.
Brian, what are your expectations for Tyler Bowen as a recruiter, and in your hiring process, how big of that was those conversations for you?
Big, and you guys can probably already see he's making an impact. He's getting guys here. He works hard at it. He makes connections. He builds relationships. He can evaluate at a high level, and I think he with some of the guys that we have, on the offensive staff together, you're starting to see group recruiting there. And so again, we're Ohio State. We should have the best players in the country, and he understands that. And again, this is another guy. The more you get around him, you'll see his personality just jumps out at you, and the guys love being around him. So, we'll see how the spring goes, but he's off to a good start.
Pat Murphy, 24/7 Sports.
Ryan, you mentioned Brian Hartline being ready to take over play calling. What have you seen in the last 2 years? Why do you feel so confident?
I think the first thing is his work ethic. He's worked his tail off, and when you evaluate coaches, you got to work at it. You got to be one of the first guys in the building. You got to be one of the last guys to leave. I mean, you got to grind on it. I think he's made the transition from being a player to a coach very well in a quick period of time. His recruiting speaks for itself, but to me, the work ethic has been excellent. The players relate to him. He has credibility. He's got confidence, but he's grown as a coach. He's handled situations well. He understands. When we're on the headset, I think that's one of the things too that people don't realize. The play caller is the play caller, but in between series, man, we need to get to this. We need to get to this. It's third down. We're going to get to this. He's been on the headset, and he's there saying, we got to get to this. We got to do this. Sees things, makes adjustments in game. But it's going to be fun to watch him. Manage a group of people now, because that's a big difference. You got all the coaches in there, and now you're the guy who's got the clicker. You got to make the adjustments. You got to challenge those coaches. You got to make the tough decisions on personnel and where we're going schematically. And I'm still going to be there, but I've really tried to let him go and run with this thing. And so I'm excited to see. When you look at Brian, when he's put his mind to something, he's got it done. And I believe he's going to get this one done too.
Austin Ward, the podcast.
Right, it felt like Billy was a no-brainer promotion for you. What made that so easy?
He really, I say this to a lot of the coaches, when you walk in the building, it's your job to bring value. And I think sometimes some coaches wait to do things. Billy jumped on it right away. He saw this as an opportunity, and he took it and ran because of the opportunity that these coaches have now to coach on the field, which they didn't have in the past. Spend one-on-one time in meetings. He took that and ran, and Chip being the offensive coordinator, he quickly, became the quarterback coach really last year. And the good thing for Billy is he was here before, so he knows how we want to coach things. He knows how we teach things. He understands the progressions. He sees it the way that we see it. So him walking in the building, that was, he was a step ahead that way. He's very smart. He works really, really hard at it. He's got a really bright future in the game, and I think the guys in the room know him, and so it was easy. And for me, it was good because we see things the same way, and I believe that I can walk out of the room and what we want to get taught is going to get done. Now, there'll be another great evaluation this spring, but I saw it last year. I saw the work he did, and he's very, very talented.
Joey Kaufman, Columbus Dispatch.
Ryan, with the makeup of the offensive staff being as young as it is, there have been past years we've had somebody like Chip last year, Kevin Wilson. Just wondering what kind of impact you think having a much younger staff has.
I think it comes down to experience, and now when you start looking at where Brian's now been here for a while, and you look at Tyler's coached a lot of football, and Locke, and even Keenan now is getting a little bit older. These guys now have more experience than they did in the past. And again, I'm still going to be there, but I think it'd be ultimately evaluated based on what you see. And these guys just won a national championship here, and a lot of coaches haven't done that, so they've seen it, they know it, and so I think that it comes down to your worth. It comes down to you know, what you've done, and I got a chance to see it on a day-to-day basis, and I think these guys are excellent.
Doug Lesmerises, Kings of the North.
Ryan, in hiring Matt Patricia, he had a sexual assault indictment in his past that did not go to trial and was later dismissed. What was the discussion with Matt around that, and what kind of vetting process did Ohio State go through?
Yeah, so, you know, as you know, when we make these decisions, you know, we spend a lot of time, you know, in the interviewing process and getting to know people, and we always take everything into consideration. And you know, that situation in particular, you know, asked a lot of questions, vetted it. Ross Bjork was part of those conversations, and you know, and feel really good about the hire. And you know, our program, as you know, is got great values and you know, standards of how we handle ourselves, which you know, you get to see on a day-to-day basis, and that's not going to change.
Bill Rabinowitz, Columbus Dispatch.
Yeah, I know you are not gonna name any kind of front runner for the quarterback job, but people have raved about the way Julian throws the ball. Seems to have all that ability. Seems to be kind of a low-key guy. How much do you wanna see the fire in him? And that was one of Will's biggest qualities. Is that almost more the bigger challenge for him than the football stuff?
I think all three of them, it's that way, for sure. Yeah, I mean, that being a leader, and showing that toughness and showing that fire and showing that grit is, you know, Will did a great job with that. So we're coming off the heels of that. So again, these guys got a chance to see that. But yeah, I agree with you. I think that's the biggest challenge, and Mick does a great job of really fostering that behavior, and forcing those guys in a leadership role, get them in front of the team and speak. You know, you got to get going, and that takes reps. So the first few times it might be a little clunky, it may not be very good, but the more you do it, the more confidence you have, and the more you get to find your voice, and that'll be important for the quarterback, as you know here.
We got time for two more questions. Bill Landis, Kings of the North.
Right, when you have a coordinator like Matt, who has a lot of success on the same side of the ball as the head coach, like with Bill Belichick, how do you evaluate that and try to discern that coordinator's impact as opposed to just like being in a very good situation and succeeding?
Yeah, and you know, like, you know, with Doug's quite like the amount of time we spend vetting all those types of things to find out exactly what's going on and the history behind it all. Is, you know, you call the guys that he worked with, you know, and I think that's a great question. And that was, you know, honestly one of my questions. You know, what did it look like? And so, you know, you ask guys who were actually in the building. You know, Nate Evers, one of them. You know, you ask coaches that he coached with. I won't get into the names of the people you call, but you gotta make a lot of calls to find out, you know, about people. And you know, what you found out was, you know, I mean, he was running the defense. Now, certainly, coach had a big hand in that. And, but as time went on there, you know, it was his show, and there was certainly a lot of collaboration there. But you know, he's very, very intelligent. Really knows defensive football, and the guys who played for him, you know, really felt like they were getting better because of the way that he taught football fundamentally. And I think even our guys in the building now, in a short period of time, it's making a lot of sense to how he teaches the game. So all those things were part of the evaluation and making a decision.
Jeff Gilbert, Press Pros.
Coach, a year ago, all the talk was national championship. With everything you had in place, this year's different. Is that a discussion still? Is that too much pressure of this group? How do you handle expectations with this team? And as you often say, you're not allowed to lose here.
Yeah, no, it doesn't change. Our expectations don't change. But you know, I think whether it was last year, the year before, this year, I mean, none of that stuff's ever going to change. And so, you know, we're going to go. But I do think coming off of last year, you get a chance to learn about your team. You get a chance to grow with your team. But yeah, I mean, I think it's 176 days or something until we play Texas. I mean, it's coming. It's right around the corner. 173, I think, maybe. I mean, it's coming, and we got to be ready to go with this team and this group. And it's just the way it goes. And you know, we want to continue to stack these years, and got to be playing our best football at the end of the season. But yeah, I mean, that's not going to change. And you know, I think last year with everybody coming back and you know some of the additions that we made, it sort of created a lot of attention nationally. And that was what it was, but ultimately that shouldn't have affected how we went about our work. That's just stuff on the outside. And you know, whatever they're going to say about this team shouldn't affect how we go to work each day and how we start our first game.
Great. Coach, thank you very much.
Thanks, Ryan.
And folks, we'll